Tonight's invocation will be led by Commissioner Baker, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Commissioner Remick. Please join us.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. As we gather today as members of the Planning Commission, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to our fellow citizens and to our great city. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to be involved in useful work, and nurture the bonds of community. Guide us to always keep in mind the enduring values of life and to exert our efforts in those areas and on those things which upon the future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make the world better. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Planning Commission, September 9th, 2021 is now called to order. We encourage you to wear a mask while indoors and observing 6 feet of social distancing. The hearing room is set up to allow a minimum of 40 people. Please respect the limit and do not add chairs. The lobby and outdoors are overflow areas. The meeting will be broadcasted in the big screen in the lobby. Once you have spoken, please exit the room so that others can sit while they're waiting their turn to speak. When your name is called, please come to the podium. Address your comments to the Planning Commission, not the audience. Any questions you ask will be answered once everyone who has signed up has spoken. When your name is called, please come to the podium. We understand that you have strong feelings in one way or the other. Out of courtesy, unless it is your turn to speak, please remain silent. Please refrain from applauding, cheering, booing, or other verbal outbursts. This is a fact-finding hearing. There is no need to repeat what has already been said. If a previous speaker has stated the opinions you wish to make, you may simply acknowledge that so that the hearing may proceed. The applicant will have 5 minutes to speak. Other speakers each will have 3 minutes to speak. Please respect the time limit. If you intended to speak, please sign up at the table in the back of the room. Names will be called in the order on the sign-up sheet. Mr. Stoddard, please call the roll.
Janet.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Stafford.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Gerke.
Here.
Goldsmith. White.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Ramick.
Here.
Hobby.
Present. May I have a motion for approval of last month's minutes?
So moved.
For those in favor, aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Second. Thank you. May I have a motion and approval for tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
The agenda is approved. Next on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. These items placed on this section are applications which demonstrate the compliance with all applicable city requirements. These items shall not be discussed by the planning commissioners or in the public. The consent agenda will be voted on in one motion. However, if there are any 2 commissioners so desired, individual items may be discussed or voted upon on a separate matter of business. May I have a motion for approval of tonight's consent agenda with staff findings and recommendations?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Director Selman, would you please read the items on the consent agenda?
Yes, thank you. The first item is a miscellaneous application, miscellaneous 21-103, a bond extension request to complete the paving of the required secondary vehicle access paving for the cottages at Bayshore. This was a request that was presented prior to the completion deadline of the original bond. A replacement bond has been provided. And that's all.
All those in favor, aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda, item 1 is approved. The next item on tonight's agenda is old business. There will be an opportunity for the applicant and for the public to provide testimony. Director Selman, will you please introduce the next item of business?
Thank you. Item number 2 is a conditional use application, CU 21-120. This is a remand from the Board of Directors for a conditional use application request to expand an existing residential group living facility located at 276 Linden Street.
A motion to approve merely gets the matter on the floor for discussion. A motion to approve and a second do not mean that you are necessarily in favor of a particular item. May I have a motion for approval
So
of
moved.
item 2?
So moved. Second.
Planning Commissioners, please hold your questions until everyone has presented. Director Selman, will you present the staff report on item number 2?
Thank you. This is a remand from the Board of Directors for a conditional use application request to expand an existing residential group living facility at 276 Linden Street. On March 11, 2021, Planning Commission unanimously approved with conditions a conditional use request by the applicant, Covenant Recovery, to increase the maximum number of residents at an existing residential group living facility zone C3 office neighborhood commercial at 276 Linden Street. Mark Toth appealed Planning Commission's action within the 30 days prescribed by Hot Springs Code. The Hot Springs Board of Directors considered this appeal on May 4th at their regularly scheduled meeting, and they overturned Planning Commission's approval of a conditional use permit for Covenant Recovery on a 3-3 vote, following the city attorney's advice that activity under Arkansas Community Corrections license is prohibited in the C3 zone district. On June 15th, the Board of Directors voted 4-2 to reconsider the appeal of Planning Commission's approval of the conditional use permit. The following month, on July 6th, Hot Springs Board of Directors reconsidered their May approval of Mr. Toth's appeal of Planning Commission's approval and voted to remand Covenant Recovery's conditional use application to Planning Commission, and so we have that item before us tonight. In voting to remand, the board specifically noted a need to study whether limiting the resident population to narrow residence and activities to those covered within Covenant Recovery's Arkansas Department of Human Services license, not allowing resident placement under a future Arkansas Department of Corrections license, and limiting the number of residents, along with other conditions, could improve neighborhood compatibility. Applicant Jeremy McKenzie amended his application with a brief written summary of Covenant Recovery's scope of activities, with additional clarification following the city's August 17th Development Review Committee meeting. In addition to his application and agreed upon changes after July 6th at the board meeting. In summary, the proposed scope now is 32 residents rather than the original 48. This provides the required minimum 200 square feet per resident, which is the standard in Hot Springs Building Code. Number 2, no halfway house, transitional housing, early release, parolees, or other Department of Corrections activities or residents. Number 3, activities will include substance abuse classes, GED classes, individual and group therapy, and will be limited to those activities authorized by Arkansas Department of Human Services Division of Behavioral Health license. Number 4, a solid privacy fence will replace and maintain the existing fence. The new fence to be solid wood fence with masonry columns, and that construction was underway at the time of the application. Number 5, a minimum of 2 staff will be on campus all times, 24 hours a day. Number 6, the smoking area will be limited to the back of the building during their outside hours only. Number 7, residents shall not congregate at the front or side of the building at any time. Number 8, deliveries are limited to normal business hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Number 9, residents will not be allowed off campus without direct staff supervision. And number 10, sexual and violent offenders of any kind are prohibited. And so that is the amendment to the application which you originally considered. The code sets out standards for conditional uses, and Planning Commission may approve, deny, defer, or modify a conditional use request based on findings of fact with regard to the standards set forth. It is the discretion of Planning Commission to determine the appropriateness of the standards for each of the specific conditional use, for each specific conditional use location. In this case, 276 Linden. The first standard is the proposed use is so designed, located, and proposed to be operated that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. This property is developed and has been part of the neighborhood for decades. It apparently developed for school use. Most recently, the property owner, Quapaw House Incorporated, operated a residential group living facility with apparently 8 female residents along with their children, as well as a daycare facility from this property. No additional site improvements are proposed other than the fence. The current property owner, Covenant Recovery Incorporated, now proposes to operate a residential group living facility use with increased capacity, which has now been revised to a maximum of 32 residents. Covenant Recovery has other facilities in Arkansas, and in the past has treated Hot Springs residents at their Pine Bluff facility. B, the proposed use is compatible with and will not adversely affect other property in the area where it is proposed to be located. Surrounding land uses include municipal park, single-family residential, gravel pit, and vacant land. This property was used for congregate living. The proposed land use should not adversely affect other properties in the area. The proposed land use is within the provision of conditional uses as set out in the ordinance. That is standard number C. A residential group living facility is listed as a conditional use in the C3 Commercial Office Neighborhood District, according to Hot Springs Table of Permitted Uses. It has been previously determined that Quapaw House's prior relationship with the Arkansas Department of Corrections is not consistent with C3 zoning and cannot be allowed for Covenant Recovery. D, the proposed use conforms to all applicable provisions of this code for the zoning district in which it is to be located, and the use facilitates public convenience at that location. This facility has provided a needed service in our community for years. The Fair Housing Act prohibits municipalities and other local government entities from making zoning or land use decisions or implementing land use policies that exclude or otherwise discriminate against individuals with disabilities. Hot Springs Code, Section 16.2.10, subsection 5, subsection D, specifically provides for considering, in the case of a residential care facility, whether the existing supply of facilities of a similar nature and operation in the community is sufficient to provide individuals with a disability an equal opportunity to live in a residential setting. E, the size and shape of the site and the size, shape, and arrangement of the proposed structures are in keeping with the intent of the comprehensive plan and this code. No additional structures are proposed. So the structures as currently arranged will stay that way. F, the internal street system, ingress or egress, off-street parking, loading, and pedestrian ways will be efficient and safe. No internal street system is proposed. Excuse me. Vehicular ingress and egress will be exactly as it has been in the past, from existing driveways on Linden Street to access the facility and the off-street paved parking. Excuse me. This is the current access arrangement. It has been evaluated by the city's Development Review Committee and found to be efficient and safe. Safeguards, including but not limited to hours and methods of operation, landscaping and screening, controlling noxious or offensive emissions, including lighting, noise, glare, dust, and odor, must be satisfactory. The hours of operation are not limited. The applicant is constructing a solid wood fence with brick columns to match brick at Linden Park. Smoking areas are limited. Outdoor hours are limited. Residents are not to congregate at the front and sides of buildings. H, the applicant is constructing a new solid wood fence with brick columns and will maintain landscaping, fencing, and open areas. Item I is regarding signs. No signs are proposed and no signs are approved as part of this request. J concerns public utilities. The city's utilities department states that utilities are available and currently serving the site and that they have no objections to this proposal. The finding is, with the recommended conditions, Hot Springs Code Section 16272A through J are met. Recommendation is to approve covenant recoveries conditional use permit with 14 conditions. And yes, I'm going to read them into the record.
Do you want a little mint?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. 32 residents are the maximum, not the original 48. This is in order to maintain the 200 square feet per resident standard in the Hot Springs Building Code. No halfway house, transitional housing, early release, parolees, or other Department of Corrections activities or residents will be permitted. Activities will include substance abuse classes, GED classes, individual and group therapy, and will be limited to those activities authorized by the Arkansas Department of Human Services, Division of Behavioral Health license. Number 4, a solid privacy fence will replace and maintain the existing fence. Number 5, a minimum of 2 staff will be on campus at all times, 24 hours a day. Number 6, a smoking area will be limited to the back of the building and during outside hours only. Number 7, residents shall not congregate at the front or side of the building at any time. Number 8, deliveries are limited to normal business hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 9, residents will not be allowed off campus without direct staff supervision. 10, sexual and violent offenders of any kind are prohibited. Thank you so much. Number 11. Oh yeah, we can get to 14 now. The facility must comply with all building and fire code requirements for congregate living, including but not limited to installation of a fire sprinkler system. Number 12, exterior lighting shall be fully shielded and full cutoff fixtures. They shall contain light on the subject property and shall not create a nuisance to surrounding properties and/or to pedestrian or vehicular traffic. Number 13, the applicant has an affirmative responsibility to demonstrate ongoing compliance with the site plan, the information submitted as part of this application, and with the conditions of this approval. The violation of any of these conditions so imposed shall constitute grounds for revocation or modification of this conditional use permit by the Planning Commission per Hot Springs Code, Section 16279. And 14, a sign is not approved for the site. A separate sign permit application, review, approval, and permit will be required prior to installation of any signs on this site. And I am done. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you, Director Selman. Will the applicant now come forward? Please state your name and address. Is there anything you would like to add to record? And if you have a maximum of 5 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Jeremy McKenzie. My address is 1317 Hillside Drive in Whitehall, Arkansas. I appreciate the opportunity to present again to you tonight. I'd like to ask you to approve our application and allow us to open our business. This has drug on for several months now after gaining our original approval in March and has cost us significantly to the point that we've had to temporarily shut down the facility with the 8 residents that we were housing there up until about 3 weeks ago, just for the sake of financial purposes. To clarify the ACC license we talked about a minute ago, when I purchased this property in December, I had pressure on me to do so by city representatives here, the judges, state politicians, members of this community putting pressure on me to bring our service here. And I purchased the property in an effort to do so. And when I did, I immediately investigated what licenses were in place at that facility to start with. And Quapaw House had operated that facility with the same 2 licenses that I originally applied for back in March for the last several years. And that was a license from the Department of Human Services as well as an ACC license. It was at the meeting 2 months ago that the board ruled that it would be against the zoning code for us to operate with the ACC license. And we're 100% okay with that. I just want to clarify that though, but that's why we went down that road in the beginning, is because, and those are the same licenses we have at our other facilities. If I had known it was against zoning code, we never would have submitted for that license to begin with. I feel like we've met every objection that we can to the community, to the city of Hot Springs. We've tried to demonstrate responsibility, accountability. We've built a very nice, elegant privacy fence to separate our building from the city park. That was a big objection from the community. We've lowered the number of residents from the original approval because that was an objection from the community. We've done away with the ACC license as an objection to the community. We're willing to do anything that we need to do to be in compliance with the city of Hot Springs and be a good neighbor and a good partner, a member of this community. We're willing to do that. I've done my best to engage the community in our business and to gain feedback from them, but I've been unsuccessful in doing so. There's a room full of people here tonight to speak against us, and I've invited every one of them to our place to come and meet me face to face, to come learn about our organization, to understand the rules that we operate by, to learn about our facility, to meet our people. And I shouldn't say nobody's came, because there's a couple members of this community tonight that did take the time to come to our facility, and I think they're going to stand up here and speak in support of us today. We just want to open our business. We just want to provide service in the city of Hot Springs under the direction that we've submitted. I don't want it to be confusing. I want to answer any questions anybody has. I think the questions are answered in that 100 and something page document I submitted to y'all that DHS regulates us very, very, very thoroughly. The city of Hot Springs has put very appropriate, very reasonable conditions on our application to be approved with those conditions. We're 100% willing to meet all of those. And if there were more, we would want to meet them. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to be a good partner. We want to be a part of this community because Covenant Recovery has been a part of this community for about 10 years now. We just have not operated here. We've taken hundreds of people from the Hot Springs community to our Pine Bluff facility and have been very successful with it. The last 3 times we came down here, I packed the room with people that were in support of our program. I didn't even invite anybody tonight. It's just becoming so exhausting, and out of respect for your time, I just didn't bring 40 people down here to support us tonight, but I could have. I felt like I've done everything that I can possibly do from a business standpoint, as a member of the community, as an applicant to the city of Hot Springs. And I'd just like to demonstrate my willingness to do anything else that somebody could come up with that was appropriate and reasonable for us to operate our business in Hot Springs.
Thank
I'd be
you.
happy to answer any questions if anybody had any.
Thank you. We will now call those who have signed to speak up on this application.
I have a
Can
couple
we ask
questions.
questions? Can we ask questions
Not-
right here?
not yet. No
At
questions.
the end?
At the end. We're going to let everybody speak first.
Okay.
In order to allow time for all interesting persons to speak, each person is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. Please address your comments to the commissioners, not to the applicant. Members of the commission can ask questions during the course of the discussion process. At this time, we'll start calling those that want to speak. Ms. Hell. Please state your name and address.
My name is Renita Philly Hale. I live at 501 Belvedere, which is in District 1, the same district as the proposed site, though it is on the edge of the district. I am here to speak in opposition to the facility. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I have 2 areas I will be addressing in opposition to Covenant proposal. These are on the topics of the numbers of the residents and the staff proposed to be on site, and the appropriateness of the setting for the proposed population. Regarding the numbers, as you may or may not recall, I spoke previously at a board meeting, to illustrate the
time.
substantial difference between the number of adults previously in residence at Linden Street, which was 8, versus the number documented in Covenant's current proposal, which is 32. It's as simple as this: 32 is 4 times 8. 4 times as many people that Covenant wants to house there. Imagine in your neighborhood, if there was a home, a building that housed a family of 8. Then that was sold, and suddenly 32 people moved in there. How would that change the environment of your neighborhood? How would that change the socialization in your neighborhood? Imagine that at one time you had invited the residents of that home, when it was a family of 8, into your home for dinner. No problem. Could sit them around your table, provide them food. And then all of a sudden, you have 32 people you're supposed to take care of. You have your same house, your same amount of food, the same people to provide it, to prepare it, and serve it. They don't fit there. That would be very difficult. Where are you going to put them? They're not going to fit around your dining room table. The second concern is more clinical and social in nature. While not directly within the scope of the Planning Commission's concerns, much has been said about the need of this population for treatment. As a professional who has worked in various areas of human services throughout my career, including substance abuse dependence care, I have a unique perspective. Knowing the population well, I can attest that the Linden Street location is not conducive for recovery. Research and experience has shown that the further a person can be from temptation, the better, especially in the early stages of recovery. Specifically, rural substance abuse and dependence treatment facilities demonstrate a markedly higher recovery rate than urban ones. For those of you who are concerned about that, Linden Street is within blocks of known drug dealers, just ask the officers back there, a liquor store, and many bars. While many in the area, directly in the residential area around this proposed facility, have worked hard to improve the neighborhood, no one can deny that these temptations are still there. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernstein Kilgore? Please state your name and your address.
Bernstein Kilgore, 323 Walnut Street. As I said before, that facility is across my backyard to the park. It is not an ideal location for a facility for drug treatment services. As previously stated, I still maintain it would be best suited if we could partner with the state and the officials who encourage the applicant to apply for a special unit to service people who had addictions and different problems. If they would partner with the state and build a facility out there on the property of the Garland County Detention Center. This is a local residential area. A residential area is no place for 32 people who have drug problems. One thing about it is that people will prostitute them because you'll have people coming in trying to reinitiate those people back into the drug life, just as well as you'll have them trying to contact people to bring drugs to them, because it's so isolated and it's in that type of location. And we don't need that in our neighborhood. We would like for you all to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Moeller? Please state your name and address.
This is Barbara Muller. I live at 217 Muscadine. All right, I'm opposed. I'd like to bring your attention to the planning staff analysis on page 44. It states that the Board of Directors meeting overturned the Planning Commission's approval of covenant recovery conditional use permit because the city attorneys confirmed that any facility operating under the Department of Corrections is prohibited in my C3 zone. On page 45 of your planning packet are listed the proposed restrictions for Covenant's planned facility on Linden Street. Item number 2 is no halfway house, transitional housing, early release, parolees, or other Department of Corrections activities or residents. Yet on page 58 of your packet, Mr. McKenzie resubmitted a letter from Judge Ohm dated February 3rd of this year that plainly states Judge Ohm's plans to send offenders from his circuit drug court to Covenant Recovery's Garland County facility. But if Covenant Recovery accepts court-ordered offenders, then they're breaking the law, because under Arkansas Code 1693-1605, an offender can only be ordered to a facility that's licensed by the Department of Corrections, which Covenant Recovery on Linden is not and will not be in the future. I'm emphasizing this because in the past, Mr. McKenzie has accepted at least one court-ordered placement that we know of into his facility at 276 Linden Street. We know this because back in May at the meeting of the Hot Springs Board of Directors, Mr. Colton Lamb spoke. Mr. Lamb said he was a resident at Covenant Recovery's facility at 276 Linden Street. I have here a copy of this year's February 22nd court order from the Circuit Court of Washington County ordering Colton Lamb to Covenant Recovery in Hot Springs to complete the Transitional Living Services Program. There are no licensed transitional living services on Linden Street, and there can't be in the future because it violates state code and city zoning. Covenant knew at the time they allowed Colton Lamb's residency at Linden Street that they didn't have the required license. Covenant should be denied a conditional use permit. They have allowed at least one court-ordered offender to reside at their Linden Street facility in violation of state statutes and the city's zoning code. Their application, past statements, and past actions show that they intend to expand the number of court-ordered placements at 276 Linden, even though they're not properly licensed as required by state law to accept such persons. You, the Planning Commission, have the power and duty to grant permits that improve our city. If you do grant a conditional use request to Covenant Recovery in order to protect the city of Hot Springs and my neighborhood, the permit must state in writing that Covenant cannot accept any offenders who are sent under court order. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark Toth? Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Yes, I have a packet for each commissioner. It's over 95 pages. You need to be well versed on it before you vote on this. I only have 3 minutes. I have to talk quickly. Items 1 through 5 of the packet make clear that this committee, this commission, is obligated under the zoning code to consider the 2013 amendment to the Park Whittington Plan. Page 1 specifically cites the zoning code. You're the planning
Thank you.
commission. Specifically says the planning commission is to take into consideration neighborhood plans. I included other instances where the planning department did exactly that. Establishing it has happened in the past and it should be applied in this situation. And I've also included a copy of the 2013 Park Whittington Plan Amendment and my earlier letter to you explaining why that amendment is applicable and how the proposed project does not meet that standard. Second, this matter was remanded back to you because what you approved violated the law. I'll be blunt. You approved a correctional facility in violation of the zoning code. It is important that you understand that what that code actually says. The Brian Albright, and the items 6 through 9 of that packet include an article where Brian Albright's quoted, as well as the state code that he cites as being applicable. You need to be familiar with that code. And that code, as Ms. Muller just said, states not only Department of Corrections, as the current condition says, but you cannot put in anybody under court order. They don't have to come from the Department of Corrections. They can come directly from the court, and that would not be allowed. That's a violation of that code. I also want to talk about public safety. Earlier in, I think it was 2015, a conditional use permit was finally approved by court order in accordance with state law, and the statute I cite is item 12 in the packet, that specifically says it is legal to discriminate against people who've been convicted of drug distribution and illegal drug distribution and manufacturing. And in fact, when the neighborhood of Quapaw Prospect objected, the city actually put that condition in their conditional use permit. Not once has that same consideration been given to my neighborhood, which is poor and mixed race. It's a prima facie case of discrimination. I've included a memo in the packet that goes over this in far greater detail. That's item number 13. And lastly, there's been talk about the gravel pit. The gravel pit's been closed for over a year. There's an email in there. The county has, and photos. So to say that that road gets lots of traffic, or one of the activities there is a gravel pit, is no longer true. And under the Arkansas Hot Springs zoning code, since it's not been used as an active gravel pit for a year, and it's non-conforming use, it can never again be a gravel pit. So when you talk about traffic loads and all of that, and Ms. Selman talks about there's a gravel pit, no, it is basically vacant, overgrown land. So you need to be well informed on this. You need to be aware that there are additional conditions that you need to put in place to protect the neighborhood, and you need to apply the 2013 amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jeremy McKenzie, did you have anything else to add?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Two things. The letter from Judge Ohm was wrote in February of this year, far before we had any idea that we couldn't accept court-ordered residents. It was part of the original application, is why it was resubmitted this time, because the original application was on file. So I did not purposely resubmit that application in intention to continue to try to take court-ordered clients. We won't take court-ordered clients. We won't take any. It's a condition of our permit. The last thing we'll do, I promise you, is spend $300,000 on commercial property in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and come over here and not play by the rules. I'm asking you tonight to just please give us a chance. That's really all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Partee? Mr. Stoddard, you might have to help her. Please state your name and address, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Sharon Perrette, and I live at 140 Cooper Street, number 4A. Originally, I was against this project because, unfortunately, I listened to the opposition and what they had to say. I have since done my own fact-finding, if you will. I have been up to the Linden Street property 4 times, unannounced, unplanned, not expected, and there's always been staff appropriate there on duty. 2 of the instances, there was somebody staggering down the street who was obviously under the influence of something, and it was not one of Jeremy's guys. It was somebody from the neighborhood. The last time I was up there, there was a whole bunch of police activity at a corner house down there. I went online and checked the registered sex offender listing. These people that are against covenant are worried about a bunch of recovering addicts, but they don't care about the registered sex offenders that are living right there in the neighborhood and so close to the park. There's been a lot of mischaracterizations of things that Jared Self from the Department of Community Corrections has had to say. I had an opportunity to talk to him and to a Daniel Potter, both high-placed individuals. They both told me they don't have any problems with Jeremy and his programs, and that what has been put out there has been mischaracterized. When I set up my meeting with Jeremy, I tried to get some of the opposition to go. No way, no how. We're not going to talk to those people. How do you solve a problem if you're not willing to sit down and have a conversation with the other side? Cooper Street, I've got a whole bunch of those homes that have 8 or less recovering addicts in them. So I know what it's like to live in that kind of a neighborhood. I've got a homeless camp out on the backside of my property. I know what it's like. I'd rather have these guys that are going to be contained and getting treatment and becoming productive members of society than the sex offenders that you don't know who they are, and they're roaming the streets unsupervised, than the homeless addicts that are living on the other side of my fence and sitting on my patio at 2 o'clock in the morning smoking a cigarette. We have a problem, not just in Hot Springs, but across the state. We need treatment. One of the people heavily involved in the opposition keeps referring to those people. I don't want those people. Well, that's discriminatory. I'm sorry, that's discriminatory, pure and simple. Please approve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pat King. Thank you. Please state your name and your address.
My name is Pat King, 219 Glade. When this first came up at the city board, I testified against it, mostly because I couldn't figure out what was going on because everybody had different stories. Nobody had checked out any facts. Everything was blah. And I've talked to people since then. Again, it's those people. We don't want it. I was married to a man that gave his mind for his country, fighting terrorists. And he was dual diagnosis when he wound up. I know how a crack addict behaves. And I've been over there. They invited us over there after the city board meeting. I said, okay, show me. And anybody will tell you, my nickname is the Bee. And I don't put up with BS. Excuse me.
Good way to put it.
I went over, and I was willing to rake them over the coals. They were polite. They showed us around. People were talking about this place being crowded. You can't believe how much room is in there. And they've got it worked so when you come in, you're 4 to a room in some big rooms. And if you're doing good, you can move into the 2 to the room. And if you're really doing good toward the end, you can get into the 1 to a room. That's an incentive system. I talked to the guys outside after that meeting. They said, and I said, people can get, he said, we self-monitor. The best place to be is where other people who know what you're going through are going to be there and help keep you from going out. Now, another thing is these people, a lot of them, and I'm saying these people, not those people, a lot of them have jobs. They are taken to their jobs and back. They are working, they are paying for their treatment. This is not one of those where you go and for 90 days, while somebody else is paying for it, you get basically doped up and thrown in a room, and when your 90 days are up, you're back on the street. There's a lot of people don't like rehab because that's what they've experienced. That's not here. These people got skin in the game. And they want to get better. I've been there. They had a little NA-type meeting there while I was there. And I can recognize a crack addict. Maybe not the other kind, but I can recognize. These people are well on their way to recovery. They're not coming in fresh, I'm an addict. They're coming in, they want it. They're standing up for themselves. They are offering, they're getting resources from several different, the money people that they're doing out of community Christian charitable clinic. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the name of the thing, but it's a thing where people learn how to manage their money. Thank you. I have weird memory lapses. But they're working on it. These are people that want to work better. A couple of them have families to go home to. They don't want to take this back to their families. They want to keep their families. And it's as good a program as I can imagine.
Thank you, Ms.
They
King.
got
We
one guy
do
that
want to
needs
make sure
math
that we
tutoring. I'll
respect
tutor him.
everybody's time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Roxanne Wallace?
I'm Roxana Wallace. I live at 437 Whittington Avenue. I own 439, 435, and 433 Whittington Avenue. I've invested over $500,000 in the community, and I am opposed to this, not because these people are searching for help. I think that's a good thing, but I am opposed to it for the following reasons. I understand Covenant Recovery is now seeking to obtain a license from the Arkansas Department of Human Services Behavioral Health. This license does not permit them to house court-ordered drug offenders. 1693, 1605C describes a criminal offender as one who's been transferred through the Arkansas justice system. This would include anyone that has appeared in Judge Ohm's drug court. If you grant covenant recovery to operate from the Linden Street address, it must be made clear and in writing that covenant cannot receive any court-ordered residence. I know that he has stated that. Numerous people have discussed this, but it really needs to be in writing. They would need a license from the Department of Corrections for that, and these are not allowed in residential and commercial areas as per the city's zoning code. Now, there's been a partial fence put up on the south side between the children's playground and the facility. However, it doesn't extend past the pavilion area or to the end of the property on that side. There's absolutely no fencing around the rest of it. There isn't any. So if they're replacing fence, that needs to be made clear. There needs to be a fence completely around the area. Also, you said that there shouldn't be a sign. Well, if you look at your monitors, there's a sign already there. Just wanted to make sure you know that. Mr. McKenzie has repeatedly changed his proposals for the number of residents in front of the city council. He said in front of anyone, and he said it again tonight, he'd do anything to get his permit passed. He's going from 8, he went to 48, he mentioned 72, went down to 12, back up to 24 at the last city council meeting. Now I believe it's 32. Really? How many times is he going to change the numbers on this? He stated that a minimum of 2 staff would be there 24 hours a day. Now, I've taught for over 30 years. I've been a park ranger for 7. I conducted many summer residential programs for the state of Arkansas. I know that is an unreasonable number of staffers for that many people. If one is taking a break, has to go to the bathroom, how many are left? 1. Is that really what you'd want in your neighborhood? 1 person taking care of 32 people? I don't think so. Who are the staffers? This woman just said they're going to monitor themselves. Okay. What credentials do they possess? Will these people be policing themselves? Are there going to be random drug testing? What are the repercussions for use on campus? Is there a no tolerance policy? I'd just like to suggest an oversight committee that's put in place to make sure things don't change from what you agree that he is able to do. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Oh, one other thing. I would love to see the city purchase this property from him and put parks and trails over there where they could put up greenhouses and they could take care of all of the parks, Linden Park, all the downtown area.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much. Byron Jackson.
Hi, I'm Byron Jackson. I live at 105 Woodmere. I came in at the last minute. Really didn't prepare anything, but I just wanted to let you know why I thought about it. I'm not against people being rehabilitated, but I am opposing the number of people on Linden. I'm just going to give you an experience I had about approximately 4 weeks ago. I had a friend visiting from out of state, and we got in my car and we're driving out of my driveway to go eat. Late in the afternoon, I don't know who the gentleman was, but it was a man rushed up to my car before I got out of the driveway, and I listened to what he had to say. And he wanted to ride specifically to that facility. I didn't ask him any other questions about it, but I assumed maybe he had a time he had to be there. I don't know that, but he's the type of person that I tentatively would have given him a ride, but I asked the lady next to me, she said no, it scared her to death. Now, again, I don't judge people by what they look like, but he was a little frightening. Now here's where I'm going. I've lived out there for about 7 years. I've been in Hot Springs since '77, and I've seen Whittington at its lowest, where people are frightened to go down there. now I'm seeing, because I drive up and down there a couple times a day, I see a lot of girls and ladies walking their dogs, a lot of ladies running behind their strollers with children in them, a lot of other bicyclers and people, families going there and so forth. And if there were people that looked, and again, I don't like to talk negative about people, but looked like this gentleman that wandered around there at all, it would scare them. And downtown has come up drastically over the last few decades. And my point is allowing that to happen, and anyone wandering around and asking questions from the facility, I think would be a negative impact on the city and on the neighborhood. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vanessa Grover? Yes, and please state your name and your address.
My name is Vanessa Grover. I live at 949 Whittington. I wasn't sure if I was going to speak, and I'm speaking so it's not quite prepared. I'm opposed of allowing this expansion. Please keep it at a manageable limit of 8 persons. This drug rehab program, the location is not conducive to being adjacent to Linden Park, where the school children play, the soccer teams play, and is used by local residents. It is also 1 block from one of Hot Springs' most used athletic parks, Whittington Park, which is our historical treasured area. Hot Springs is a beautiful city which is dependent upon tourism. By allowing this expansion could affect Hot Springs, the neighborhood, negatively. By allowing Arkansas's largest prison reentry program to increase the residency, operating in a drug rehab center next to Linden Park and among Whittington Park will have a negative effect to the neighborhood and potentially to Hot Springs. There was an article, a census published, that said that 40% of persons did not feel safe in their homes in Pine Bluff. Please help us feel safe at home. Drugs are unpredictable, and drugs make persons do criminal acts. Perhaps Mr. McKenzie could sell this to Kevin Costner and turn it into a memorabilia museum that Kevin Costner wants to put his museum in Hot Springs. That would be more conducive to the parks, to the neighborhood, to the residential area. The Whittington Valley has its share of subsidized living facilities, and we have been working hard on and if you could please consider the negative impacts by putting a drug rehab with 32 residents in it would have a negative impact to our neighborhood and potentially to the tourism, which is 1 block away, mile away. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Those who have signed up to speak have done so. The public hearing of this portion is now closed. Planning commissioners will now discuss the project and take some action. Commissioners, do you have questions?
I have some questions.
Commissioner White?
Where to start? I'd like to ask Mr. Toth, did you take Mr. McKenzie up on his offer to tour his facility?
I'd say this, it's irrelevant. Mr. McKenzie has broken the law in the past by having people there in violation, court-ordered people in violation of the state law because he did not have a license.
That was a yes or no question.
Please let me finish, you've asked me. And consequently, I don't like to associate with people who break the law.
Okay, all right. So I'll take that as a no. Okay. Let me ask you one more question. You're the president of the Whittington thing, and
Whittington Valley Neighborhood Association, right. Yes.
And you and I are in agreement 99% of the time when it comes to preserving neighborhoods. This is one time where I disagree with you. and I'll just be blunt and honest with you. What I see when I listened to all the testimony, when I listened to all the testimony last time, the attitude that I perceived personally was a not in my neighborhood, not in my backyard attitude. If that, but that doesn't, that's contradictory to what really goes on in that neighborhood. I mean, have you been as passionate, in your position as president of the association, and your obvious concern for that neighborhood, and I applaud you for that. Have you been as passionate in dealing with the crime, with the sex offenders, with the drug houses, with the drug addicts, with the homelessness? Have you been as passionate in dealing with any of these issues?
When they're brought to my attention by the residents, and I do get calls, I have a very good relationship with the police and the police department. And yes, we work vigorously on these issues.
Okay.
Now, do I know everything in the neighborhood? I can only do what I'm told, and I'm not paid, and it's not a full-time job for me to do that. I mean, okay. I would point out that my arguments that I made here are in reference to the zoning code. I would think this board would uphold the zoning code, the points that I made. I didn't talk about these people or that people. I talked about, you have to go through the review process using the zoning code, and I actually printed that out for you.
Mm-hmm.
I printed out the state code where I said you should put in there about they cannot accept court order. Mr. McKenzie has agreed to that. Put it in writing, please. Put that in writing in there.
That is
It is in writing.
It is in writing. It's a condition.
It is a condition.
I've read it. It does not say court ordered.
It says.
Violent offenders.
It says halfway house, transitional
Or
housing,
other
early
Right.
release,
Corrections
parolees, or other
activities.
Department of Correction activities or residents.
Or other correct,
That takes into account what you're,
or if you believe so. I'm just saying, okay.
Yeah.
And the point about the protections that were afforded Quapaw Prospect with regards to prohibiting people who've been, that's state law. You can legally say no people who've been convicted of drug distribution or illegal drug distribution or drug manufacture. They can be legally prohibited from living there. That same provision was afforded Quapaw Prospect, which is a white, wealthy neighborhood, and never once has that provision been offered to us. And we are a mixed race, low to moderate income neighborhood.
I take offense.
Yes.
Well, you
So do
should,
I.
because it's
No,
reasonable.
no, I take offense at what you're saying. You're accusing us of being all kinds of
I am stating facts. If they're
people.
inconvenient,
And
I'm sorry.
You don't even know us.
you don't, no, you're not
I
going
have
Well, hang on a
question
second,
for
though.
you. You
We're
don't get away
not
with
here
this one.
to talk about this. We're here to talk about conditional use.
And that's
So
why
we
I've
have
asked,
to
that's why I've
maintain
asked that you
that.
make that condition, which was granted under court order to Quapaw Prospect, that you grant us the same protection. Why treat us differently?
Well, Mr. Toth, I can personally tell you that when Quapaw Prospect came to us on an issue, I don't remember exactly what the issue was, I had to remind them, as I will remind you, that this commission represents between 30 and 40,000 people, not 300, 400, or 1,000. And there are times that we make decisions that are unpopular with the neighborhood, but we have to think of the overall good for the city.
Well, the issue is that there's concern about crime. That is a lawful condition that could be imposed that would afford some protection or address some of the concerns the residents have had about the potential for crime. And it is a lawful condition you can put in.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Toth, can you show me where it says in our code that low-income mixed race neighborhoods get an input over the other neighborhoods? Because, you were talking about that you were being discriminated because of low income and mixed race. I don't think we think that way up here.
What I said was, I just pointed out, Quapaw Prospect got that condition that I've just discussed.
There you go, okay.
We did not.
Because why?
And I pointed out.
Because why?
Because
You said it, you said
I
it.
pointed, I'll say it again. Quapaw Prospect is a white wealthy neighborhood, and we are a low to moderate income,
Okay.
mixed race neighborhood.
Sounds like
Now,
discrimination to me.
whether you feel, I've just stated, Ms. Selman often says just states facts. I've just stated facts. And, you know, I think that needs to be into the record.
Thank you very much.
If we read the recommendations where it says no halfway house, transitional housing, early release, parolees, or other Department of Corrections activities or residents, and then I read on page 83 of your packet where it says, nothing in the subchapter prohibits, this is what you're talking about, people have been convicted by any court of competent jurisdiction of the illegal manufacture or distribution of a controlled substance.
Yes.
So I don't know if this is a question for you or a question for Mr. McKenzie. Would people convicted of manufacturing or distribution of drugs be candidates for this facility?
Normally, no.
Or would they be under the care of the Department of Corrections?
They would have been more candidates if we had proceeded with the original application with the ACC Department of
Correct.
Corrections.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Now, I can't promise that somebody from years ago, once you have a conviction, you have it forever.
You're exactly right. So my
And that
next
doesn't
point
disqualify
is,
people to
if
come
someone
and
was
receive
convicted
services.
10 years ago of manufacturing drugs, should they be prohibited from living in your neighborhood? I think the answer is no.
And what's going to prohibit them from living anywhere in your neighborhood?
So I don't know that that's a valid argument for us to consider.
I've just stated that we're being treated differently than Quapaw Prospect.
No, I think that you're not, because we've made in the recommendations, we've made the consideration for the Department of Corrections, people who are being under the guidance of the Department of Corrections. So if they're currently in trouble for distribution or manufacturing, these are not people that would be in a recovery. They're going to be in the Department of Corrections.
Okay, commissioners, we've got some time. We can talk through some of these
Okay.
as we go forward, not to cut you short.
I have one more question, Mr. Todd.
Absolutely.
Did you purchase your property that you live in currently when the Quapaw House was in operation?
Yes, and having asked that, we knew that they had more than 8 people there. We filed a lawsuit against the city to try and get the city to enforce the code.
But you purchased the house while that was in operation? That's all I needed to know. Yes or no?
With 8.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Walker, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh, I have some more questions.
Commissioner Baker?
I actually have several questions. I'm going to try to condense it. I think Mr. McKenzie needs to answer these questions. So can you tell us, so we have a little better understanding, is there a legal definition of halfway house, transitional housing? Can you tell me what that is?
I can't, no ma'am. I would have to refer to the city attorney or my personal attorney to answer that question. I would assume there's some sort of legal definition to describe that, but I could not tell you exactly what that legal definition was.
All right. My next question is, explain, maybe this is an easier one for you to answer. Explain the difference between the residents that you proposed in this facility and those in a halfway house in transitional housing.
Okay. One of the biggest discrepancies that was brought up just a minute ago, and it was part of the original argument from the very beginning, was the level of traffic that would come in and out of our facility, the coming and going, these people leaving the facility unsupervised, going here, going there. With a transitional housing license, we would house people on a long-term basis. We would help find those residents employment. We would enroll them in outsourced services throughout the community that we already have partnerships with, and they would come and go from our facility every day. It's transitional living. They're transitioning from one point of their life to a better point of their life, and we connect them with services associated. Under this scope of service, with the DHS license, our residents will not work. Okay, our residents, they'll only come and go across campus if we directly supervise them, as I've stated in the
Across
revision.
When you were here
campus.
last time, didn't you say they weren't allowed to even have cars when they're staying with you, or are they allowed to have
No,
cars?
ma'am, they were, in the transitional program, they're allowed to have cars, because, again, it's independent living. And so
But in
that's
this, will they?
No, ma'am, they couldn't drive it. If they did, they might drive themselves to treatment. Their car would just like stay out front or something.
They
until
have to stay
discharge.
on campus.
Yes, the residents would stay on campus. They would not be employed. The residents won't be employed at the center.
And how many square feet is this facility?
10,500,
Okay.
roughly.
Any more questions?
Um,
I have a couple for Mr. McKenzie.
Yes,
Is this male only or is it co-ed?
It'll be male only.
Okay.
Um,
How many residents do you have in Pine Bluff in your facility there?
We have two facilities in Pine Bluff. We have one that's licensed for 38 people and one that's licensed for 25, and those facilities stay at full capacity most of the time.
are those in the city?
They're right in the middle of the city.
Okay.
Is there a do you have a sprinkler system at the current building?
A what?
Fire
Yes.
sprinkler system?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And we have one at Linden Street, too.
I mean, they've already approved all of that. That's in our packet.
Okay,
good.
so I guess my last question, I think, for you is, at your Pine Bluff facility, do you have a large number of people who are charged with crimes while under your care at the Pine Bluff facility?
Yes.
So while they're with you, they're out committing crimes?
Oh, no. No.
That's-
The ones that are
I guess-
there,
let me
not-
see.
Might have a
While in
previous
your care,
charge.
have they been?
No, ma'am.
Charged with a crime while under your care?
No, ma'am. Be happy for you to subpoena the records for the 911 calls to our facility, and you'll only find like 2 in 10 years medical calls.
Okay. All right, that's all for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Just as a point of clarification, there was a point made about the number of employees that would be on site. I just want to make sure I read this right, but it seemed like when I was reading through the information before the meeting that you said that there would be 5 employees during normal working hours and 2 in off hours. Is that correct?
That's
thought I read
that's
15.
reasonably correct. So Ms. Selman asked me to explain that further a couple of weeks ago prior to coming to this meeting, and so we talked about peak shift. Okay, so at peak shift, there could be 5 or 6 staff on campus at any time. Peak shift would be the middle of the day, normal business hours, because there's a cook there, there's therapists there, there's whoever's there in the bulk of the day of receiving service. But as that licensure standard manuals dictates from DHS, the minimum would be 2 staff members on campus 24 hours a day, no matter what, with 32 residents on campus. So we would range from 2 to 5, and 5 is kind of a guess. I kind of got to have the facility open and just really see what it comes to. Our facility in Pine Bluff that houses 38, I think employs 13 people, and those 13 people work across the shift. Again, we don't have as much accountability and as much restriction with the ACC license that we have in Pine Bluff. Taking that away, only having the DHS license holds us to a much higher standard.
What about the credentials for those employees? Do they have any special accreditation for working in this type facility?
The clinical staff do, yes. And then anybody, even just the direct care staff is what they're referred to, that would be there at night when the residents were asleep, would all have to adhere to a background check. They'd have to pass a background check. They'd have to be drug and alcohol free. They wouldn't necessarily have to have an educational credential to be that type of staff, but as a drug and alcohol counselor, I'm certified with the state of Arkansas as a certified substance abuse counselor, as would most of the people on our treatment clinical team, even with more credential than what I currently hold. I'll employ people that have far better credential than I have.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman, I think Commissioner Erickson has a question.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I think one of the reasons why this has been so contentious, besides it's a very sensitive issue, it's where people live, it's about people that are in crisis.
Sure.
But I think the thing that I find most troubling is I don't understand your business. I don't understand your business model. I'm not quite sure what your business is, so I'm going to be asking you a series of questions to try to determine that, because typically, this commission would see a document that was prepared with a very clear plan of action. And what I'm seeing with yours is it's becoming a living document, and you are trying to adapt to the ecosystem in which you're in because you've invested prematurely, ignorantly, without understanding what you're actually getting into. So now we've got kind of the whole community is all up in an uproar, all right? So, let me ask you, are you for-profit or non-profit?
Covenant Recovery is a nonprofit organization. We have a 501c3 status.
Okay, having said that, are you aware that you are not in current standing with the state of Arkansas?
We'll just have to ask my accountant. So no, I'm not aware of that.
So, okay, so these are the things that cause concern. So
Sure.
if you're bringing people into the neighborhood that are in crisis and to be unpredictable, we need to know that we can trust you, that you have all your ducks in a row and can be able to facilitate.
Sure.
Okay? So if you are a nonprofit, why am I reading that these people are self-paying for their room and board?
Because even as a nonprofit, the facility still has to have operating cash.
Yeah, but you are eligible for grants and assistance.
I mean, we've gotten very minimal of that over the 10 years that we've operated.
Have
We've
you
got,
sought it out?
to a certain extent, yes.
Because I believe that somebody in the room earlier made a wonderful recommendation to partner with a federal facility and be able to expand your program properly to meet the needs of the jail system, right? Okay, so again, these people that are paying for their room and board, so you're getting them jobs with established partners?
I wouldn't call them established partners. We have relationships with members of the community, employers in the community.
Okay.
They love our people.
Okay, and then how much are you charging these people for this program that they're ordered to shoot?
The fees at this particular facility will be different, and that fee schedule is not established yet. Okay? I will speak to the current fee structure for the Pine Bluff facility.
No? You gotta go for here. What do you anticipate? What is your
So,
business plan, your business model?
Commissioner Erickson, I 100% love your questions and thank you so much, but we're here to look at the land use and the location right now.
The land use is part of the business use. If the business is operating, what is the business? Exactly. because
But we're not
business
here
is
for any
different.
type of licensing on the business aspect. We're simply here to look at the conditional use and the location.
I dare challenge that because if he is switching from the ACC into a group home facility, that is under federal regulation that has a maximum of 16 people.
And again, they will take over any type of new licenses or whatever that needs to happen. But we're not looking at licenses. We're looking at the land use and the location.
We are looking at the conditions.
We are looking at the conditions,
And
but
the
we're not here
conditions
about the
are stating-
licensing.
The conditions are stating 32 people, up to 32 people.
And I understand that. Thank you very much. But again, we're here to rule on what has been recommended to us by the Planning Commission. We're not here to rule on what is going on in Pine Bluff. And I understand your outlook on the business model.
At all.
Well, we seem to be talking a lot about Pine Bluff. We need to literally come back to Hot
What
Springs.
he intends to do in the land use in the facility that is here. And that is what is the missing piece of the puzzle.
We're going to provide a residential drug and alcohol rehabilitation facility licensed under the direction of DHS.
That is what we're here to rule on.
Whether or not you're in compliance with DHS is really not our purview.
It's not
How
our,
he obtains his financing is not any of our business.
none of our business. We're here to simply, and not simply, but yes, conditional land use of this applicant.
So I'm trying to put some ease to some of the questions I heard. Someone said something about the signage. Is the sign that's currently there permitted?
Yes, there's
Okay.
no,
So the
no
sign that's there
proposed-
is legally placed there.
there's no proposed change.
And if he wanted to change it, then he
Then
would
that
have
goes
to.
under
back.
number
Yeah.
14 of
Yeah, okay, very good.
recommendations.
I just got a comment for Mr. McKenzie. I served under Judge Ohm and Judge Schweitzer as a volunteer in district court for years. I don't know how many hundreds of times I saw people of all ages, all backgrounds, all ethnicities that were in desperate need of a place like yours. Hundreds of times. Yeah, and there was not enough, at that time, there was not enough places within this city that the courts could even recommend someone to go.
And again, Commissioner White, we're not here we're talking about,
I understand.
So-
It's just a comment, personal comment.
they did a very good job of, going through what they had to talk about, so we have to do it in a timely manner ourselves.
All right.
Thank you very much. I very much do appreciate that. Commissioner Grinke, do you have anything to add?
No, ma'am.
Thank you very much. So if there needs to be any other comment amongst ourselves, we can do this at this time. If we want to talk about maybe adding something else or another recommendation, this is the time that we do that.
I don't think if we're talking about the codes, what they're requesting about having in writing that he would not accept people from the courts, I don't think that is our purview there. Would you say, Ms. Selman?
That is something that is available to you if you would choose to do that. There was a suggestion about accepting a condition that was placed by a court on a previous project. That is certainly an option for you. This is a hearing where you look at the facts and make your determination about what, if anything, can make this proposal meet the requirements of Hot Springs Code regarding conditional uses.
Okay.
So it is the Planning Commission's discretion. However, there are other agencies who are doing the licensing, the evaluation of how things operate inside the walls. We are not that agency. We can say inside the walls you have a fire sprinkler system, but we do not have any jurisdiction to do some of these other things that might be tempting.
That's the way I feel.
And
too.
Mr. Ramick, before, if you were thinking of making that a condition, before you do that, I've spent a lot of time in the court watching people get appointed to court-appointed treatment facilities. And without court appointment, these people might not make it to a facility.
And I had no intention of making
Okay,
that a
good.
condition.
Thank you.
We just all know that that was something that almost everybody that stood up here and spoke about, it was a concern of theirs. So of course, we have to bring it up. So we can decide to or not to, and somebody would have to make that recommendation.
In that case, didn't I hear that there was an acceptance of that condition by the applicant?
I am. I'm acceptable to it. Since you called me back up here, I have to tell you what my personal thought on it is, and I agree with Commissioner Baker. Just because the court refers somebody to go receive services, they refer people to go see their parole officer. It doesn't make the parole office in violation. I mean, we're not talking about violent offenders. We're not talking about sexual offenders. We're talking about normal people. I have one of my residents in the room tonight. Nobody knew it. He's sitting in the back. He was court-ordered our program a year ago. He stayed. He's done an excellent job. He's been part of this community. He's from this community. He's lived here his whole life. He's been sitting back here in the back of the room the whole time.
No,
I would like the ability to have offenders court-ordered to the program that the court deems necessary to receive service at the program.
I would say, please don't tie the hands of the judicial
with the
system
condition
here.
of no violent and no sexual offenders.
That's pretty clear here, yeah.
100% put that in writing. We don't have those type of
I understand your point. was reflecting on the fact that it was kind of
There's so few
ad hoc agreed
options
to.
out there that I don't want to make it our place to tie the hands of the judicial system.
You're right.
The reason I agreed to it a minute ago is because at this point, I have to agree to something. We have to open our business. And if that's the case, I'll take it.
No,
Because I want to be a good partner. But that would limit and that would tie our hands significantly to the number of people that we could provide service to.
I personally think the recommendations provided to us, the conditions are fine. I don't think we need to adjust
I
anything
mean, we
there.
took the parolees out of it. They can't transfer from Department of Corrections. Those are rightfully, everybody in this room knows that those are really the people that we don't want to just fill up Linden Street with. I get it. Like, I understand the community side too. I certainly do.
Okay.
Does any of the commissioners have any other questions they would like to bring forth? At this time, Mr. Starter, please call the roll.
This is on a motion to approve with the recommended conditions.
Yes.
And staff findings.
Yes, and that.
Erickson,
No.
Stafford,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Gerke,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Walker. Approve. Ramick,
Approve?
Janet,
Yes, approve.
Hobby.
Approve. The next item on tonight's agenda is new business.
Excuse me, Madam Chairman, the item has been approved with 14 conditions. The action of Planning Commission is final unless appealed to the Board of Directors within 30 days.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there. The next item on tonight's agenda is new business. There will be an opportunity for the applicant and for the public to provide testimony.
Madam Chairman, can we wait until the room clears, please?
Sure.
Can't hear you.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Are you good, Brian?
Now I can hear you.
Very nice. Director Selman, would you introduce the next item, please?
Thank you. Item number 3 is a request to rezone property located on Blackhawk and Airport Roads. The rezone would be from R2, single-family residential, to C4, regional commercial open display, to resolve a split zone on the property.
A motion to approve merely just gets this matter on the floor for discussion.
So moved.
Second?
Planning commissioners, please hold your questions until everyone has presented. Director Selman, will you please present the report on item 3, please?
Yes, thank you very much. The applicant is Mr. John Keeling. He's representing property owner Southern Land Development, LLC. He's requesting C4 Regional Commercial Open Display District zoning for approximately .40 acres of land located near the corner of Blackhawk Street, Airport Road, and the Martin Luther King Jr. Expressway. Subject property is currently zoned R2 suburban residential, has a future land use classification of residential low, and is located in Board of Directors District Number 4. There are, as you know, mandatory findings which must be made in responding to a request to change zoning. They are found in Hot Springs Code, Section 16-11E1. And the proposed rezoning request responds to these findings in the following ways. The zoning change request demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development or zoning, as all surrounding and nearby properties are zoned commercial except for property to the west, which is already developed as a Martin Luther King Jr. Expressway. Surrounding developments are of a non-residential nature consisting of a wide range of commercial uses. The proposed rezoning request responds to a significant change in surrounding physical, economic, land use, or other conditions, as it was zoned residential prior to the construction of the Martin Luther King Jr. Expressway. Airport Road, Arkansas Highway 70 West area of the city has seen significant commercial development over the past years. This is at the corner of Airport and the Expressway, which is one of the busiest intersections in the city. This property, as you know from your information in your packet, is partially zoned C4. The northwest corner of it is still zoned residential. That is a weird little situation that we see from time to time, and the compatibility of the request with what is going on around it is apparent. The future land use plan map at this time still reflects the residential use that was placed on the land many, many years ago. Future land use plan map designation of linear commercial corridor would give the property a consistent land use classification and would also be consistent with the majority of the surrounding C4 zoning. The recommendation is that you recommend to the Board of Directors that they adopt an ordinance amending the future land use plan map designating the property as linear commercial corridor. And with regard specifically to the zoning, the applicant has successfully demonstrated that standards for favorable consideration have been met. You are able to establish a basis for recommending to the Board of Directors that the proposed change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development and zoning. With the future land use map amendment to linear commercial corridor, the subject would have a consistent land use designation and would be consistent as well with the majority of the surrounding C4 regional commercial open display district zone properties and their future land use designations. The recommendation is that you recommend, again, that the Board of Directors adopt an ordinance amending the zoning map by designating the subject property C4 Regional Commercial Open Display District because you have made a specific finding that the change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development and zoning, and the change is consistent with the objectives of the zoning code. And I might also add that it is clear that there's been a significant change in the surrounding area since the original zoning of the property to R2. Things are in no way like what they were. So the recommendation then is to approve.
Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address? And is there anything you'd like to add to the record? You have 5 minutes.
John Keeling, 90 Stonegate Terrace, Hot Springs. No, I think that that was very well describes the issue. It's just housekeeping, really, for that area to be considered residential. It just seems silly, and like Commissioner Hobby stated, it was done before the, probably in the 50s. I don't know the exact date, but before the bypass was there. So I don't anticipate any problems or any any backlash. I just see this as general housekeeping. Thank you.
I don't think anybody's gonna build a house there, but.
There's some housing down John Owens Road.
Thank you. We'll now call those who have signed up to speak on this application.
There are none. Nobody signed up.
Thank you.
They don't love us? They don't want to talk to us?
The public hearing of this portion is now closed. Any planning commissioners will now discuss the project and take action.
Can we do the R2 one at the same time, or just this little one because it's being requested? This parcel. this parcel.
We cannot expand it to the highway department property.
Yeah, it's just on this application.
Right.
Commissioner Baker?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Walker?
No question.
Commissioner Janet?
Nope.
You're
thank
good?
you.
Commissioner Remick?
No questions.
Commissioner White?
No questions.
Oh, my God.
Commissioner Greeke?
Come on, Brian.
Commissioner Stafford?
Yes.
I'm just curious what, what the plan, I mean, I understand why you're requesting
Yes, sir.
this.
I
Just-
think I know where you're going with that question. I'm a Subway franchisee. I've been in business here in Hot Springs since 1996. I own the Subway that's, within a stone's throw over there at 1018 Airport Road. The intent is to try to recover from this COVID-19 mess that we're all in. It has totally changed our business. We have to have a drive-through.
Oh, yeah.
The location that we are at now does not allow that. People want contactless service. So the intent is to build roughly a 6,000 to 7,000, probably a 6,000 square foot building, have a Subway and a drive-through on one corner, and to try to, just a small strip center, basically.
Okay, I'm just wondering
Yes, sir.
what the use was.
Thank you.
Well, don't take away our Subway over there.
Commissioner Grinke?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Erickson?
No question.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve item 3, but the staff report findings and recommendation is to be approved. Mr. Starter, please call the roll.
Stafford,
I'm sorry, approved.
Baker,
Approve.
Gerke, White,
Approve.
Walker,
Approve.
Ramick,
Approve.
Janet,
Approve.
Erickson, Hobby.
Approve. The next item on the agenda is the director's report. Director
I
Selman?
need to say one more thing.
Yes, sir.
That item, obviously, the recommendation is to approve. Planning Commission's action in this case is a recommendation. The final decision will be made by the Board of Directors. And that will be, what is today's date? 9/9. That,
It'd be the 16th.
That will
No,
be-
it'd be
no.
the,
it'll be
Either
the
the
first meeting
fourth-
in October.
Yeah.
First meeting in October will be
Yes.
the 5th.
Okay. So, October 5th in this room at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
You brought sandwiches beforehand.
take
Was
2.
it-
The next item on the agenda is the director's report. Director
Um,
Selman?
Well, the first thing, of course, is the item that you heard prior to this one is about 99.9% likely to be appealed. So I would appreciate you continuing to not discuss it among yourselves or with anyone else, because although it would be unusual, it's not impossible that it will come back here. So it's important that we maintain the wall. Exactly.
Got it.
Cone of silence. Other than that, I won't take any more of your time. We're moving forward with budget for the upcoming year. We're hoping to add a long-range planner to our staff who would have responsibility for assisting with historic preservation about
That'd be
50%
good.
of the time. And that was for you, Brian. And also to help us with other long-range projects, not so much development-related, but that would allow us to focus on implementing programs and projects in our long-range plans.
That'd be good.
So
It's outstanding.
That's something we have never had, and so fingers crossed.
I hope
hoping
you
we're-
can find them.
Hoping we can get that.
Speaking
Yes.
of budget, Are we eligible for the $300 incentive to get our vaccine?
Happy to
It'll come on
report
your paycheck.
that I'm not going
That invisible one?
to be
Yeah.
determining eligibility for that program. And I would refer you to the city manager.
Okay.
I've had both
Yep.
of mine, so that means I get $600. I'll send,
You
I'll
have to
send
make
Bill a
both
bill.
of them.
Well, this is outstanding. If there's no further business to discuss, we are ready to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.